Hey guys, Parfax here, and today we're going to talk about optimizing your DPS for the Fire Staff in PVE dungeons. All right, let's get started. All right, so we're here in New World, and I wanted to bring you guys a video about optimizing your DPS for the Fire Staff. Now, I know a lot of you guys play the Fire Staff. It's a great weapon. It's a lot of fun, but I've been trying to dive more into how to optimizing it to its fullest potential, and I found that a lot of people are running it, in my opinion, extremely incorrect. Now, the first, I want to talk about the reason why I did this. I have a lot of gear at 625, and I looked at this Fire Staff and I was like, you know what? I really need to make a build around this Fire Staff. Now, I originally thought this might be BIS, and this would be in certain situations, but honestly, keenly empowered is actually a little bit better here. Flame attunement is really good here too. Now, before you guys go on a rant about keenly jagged and chain just being a higher single target damage than keenly empowered, the videos that I've seen about this doesn't take into effect that we are going to be using abilities, and we're going to be stacking a lot of abilities on top of each other. But honestly, if you can get an Angry Earthbane Vicious in any proc there at the bottom, it's going to be absolutely crazy, and especially see either a fire or keenly empowered. So I would love to have a damage parser and to get those two staves, like any two staves, and kind of go at it to see which is better. But I would imagine with the amount of ability damage we're doing, we're stacking lots of abilities on top of each other, the keenly empowered is actually probably going to be a little bit better. Now, let's talk a little bit. So I guess we're talking about gear. Let's talk a little bit about your ring. We're going fire damage, but we will talk about that here in a second. So let's talk about why I wanted to make this video. So when you go into a PvE dungeon, you typically see one of two builds. You'll see the typical PvP mage build with Pillar of Fire, Fireball, and Burnout, or you'll see the Flamethrower build, which typically is Fireball, Flamethrower, Burnout. Now, the reason why I want to make this video is because I cannot stand people using Burnout in PvE. Now, if you're traversing the open world, that is fine, but we are specifically talking about dungeons, and Burnout honestly is an extremely selfish ability. If you can't just get out of whatever you're into, you know, being able to dodge normally, then you should just really focus on learning the mechanics. Because honestly, Burnout, for even it being a maneuver skill, it has very little applications in dungeons. The only times that I've seen it used to a decent effect is when somebody is trying to get out of, let's say, the last boss in Genesis, where you're trying to get behind a rock, or maybe in something like in Tempest, the second to last boss, Nishantan. I've seen them use that, but more often than not, you just need to learn to get better. The tank who has aggro of the boss, who is in heavy armor, who rarely ever has a gap closer, can get out of whatever we are getting into, whatever mechanic you have to avoid. You need to be able to do it too. So that's kind of what prompted this video, was watching people use Burnout and how much it actually tilts me, because Azoth right now is essentially free. You're always capped on Azoth, so there's no reason to not respect your Fire Staff to make your dungeon run go faster and smoother. Okay, so let's talk about the three abilities that I'm using. I'm using Fireball, Incinerate, and Flamethrower. Now, before you guys argue for Pillar of Fire, the only time that I would say Pillar of Fire is in any way better than Incinerate is if you're fighting a boss, let's say like the last boss in Dynasty, where it's really hard to actually get very close. If that is the case, then yes, I can see an argument to be made for Pillar of Fire, but Incinerate just does a lot more damage. Now, if you look at the tooltips, it doesn't look like it does a lot more damage, but I'm going to show you why it does a lot more damage. So let's talk a little bit about how we're going to play this build and why I think this is the best. Now, if you want to maybe move a point here and there on the tree for passives, I can see that. Now, I have pretty much every damage passive in here other than Trial by Fire, which I don't know if you guess you can call that damage passive. And then we have the while holding a Fire Staff and below 50% max health, deal 15% increased damage. But honestly, we don't want to get there. We just want to stay at full health and burn them down. You shouldn't be proccing that passive very often. And we have to, with going all the points down here and here, we don't really have any room at all for any points over here. Now, to be fair, there's nothing really over here that you really need. There's just some kind of quality of life and burning, but we're gonna keep full stacks of burning on the target anyway, so you don't actually need any burning, anything burning. Okay, so let's talk about how to play this build. Now, the reason why I love this build is because it just does so crazy amounts of damage, and it's honestly, the rotation is very simple. So part of the reason why we want Vicious, Angry Earthbane, and a proc is because we don't need Keen. Okay, and the reason why we don't need Keen is because 2 of our weapons actually back attack. So you can see here, we can guarantee a crit just by standing behind the target with Flamethrower. We can also do it with Incinerate. So you can see there, we double crit with it at 3,026. Now, we don't have any coatings on, we're not min-max, so if you see that number and it's pretty low, don't worry. It hits, in Guarded Genesis, my Incinerate hits for 10k every single time I hit it. At least 10, it pops for 10k. It's pretty big damage, okay? So let's talk a little bit about DPS rotations and why this is our DPS rotation. So when you walk up, if you can, the first thing you actually want to do is not Flamethrower, you want to Incinerate. Now why is because we're gonna get a bunch of stacks. See there we have 4 stacks on the target. 5 is our max. And then you want to hit a Fireball, and then we're gonna Flamethrower. Most people, when they do a Flamethrower build, this is how they decide they want to do their Flamethrower builds. All right, we're gonna do real high damage here. Okay, if you're doing this, you're doing it wrong. I don't know what to tell you. You can be mad at me all you want, but if you are just hitting Flamethrower, you are leaving so much damage on the table. And let me show you. So Flamethrower itself ticks pretty hard. You can see there it's ticking for almost 1100 frontal, 1600 crit. Now it's going to tick for a lot higher than it's going to tick for over 2000 inside the Garden of Genesis. But let's show you why. So we want to keep the burn stacks up. Once you get to max burn stacks, which is 5, so we're already there. I can't get any more burn stacks. All those bunch of numbers, the 85s coming up, those do nothing for me because those will always stay there. They'll stay there until the burn stacks run out, and I won't get any damage. So at that point, the only damage I'm getting from is actually Flamethrower. Okay, and the reason why you're losing damage, because watch this. So we're gonna get the full stacks up here, and typically you want to start with Incinerate because you're gonna instant 4. So we're full stacks. We're gonna have Fireball, and you look now. You see that 183? That 183 is actually basically an additional burn stack. And we do this, and if we hit, well, if you back attack it, obviously it's going to be over 3,000 for each. It's going to be about 5,000 for each if you back attack it on an Angry Earth mob. Then you're getting 10% or 10,000 damage there. It would take you 5 ticks of Flamethrower to get the same damage from Incinerate, and you're still getting the extra burn stacks. You're still refreshing 4 of those burn stacks. So you're losing absolutely nothing by hitting Incinerate. You're just gaining damage. In the Fireball, you're not only dealing more damage than a tick of Flamethrower, you're also putting a nice burning stack on the boss. Now, if the boss is running around a lot of the times, then this is a lot harder. For instance, like the Spriggan in Tempest. This is going to be a lot harder to do. The Fireball, it's not going to do nearly the amount of damage because the Smolder underneath him, he really needs to stay in place. But most bosses in this game, you can just hit it and it'll be basically be able to stay underneath them. Now, if, for instance, you're going against the Spriggan and he doesn't have Phalanx, what I would say is you would try to keep the burn stacks up as much as possible. When he runs away, you're going to throw a Fireball at him to make sure you're kind of still keeping up, you know, with your damage, and then giving nice big heavy attacks. We're going to proc our chain fire there, and it's going to be really good. So now I'm going to show you how I do a full rotation of DPS through a couple different, you know, cooldowns. So we're at full mana here, and you obviously want to be running mana food and stuff like that because this build is very mana heavy. You're going to be chugging mana pots. But because we have so many burn stacks on the target, our DPS downtime isn't that bad. So here's what you want to do. You want to start with Incinerate. We got 4 stacks of burn. We're going to do Fireball, and now we're just going to burn. Okay. Now we got full stacks of burn here. We're ticking really hard. This comes up. We're going to go ahead and hit our Incinerate. Now, what I like to do here is I'll actually do a couple fully charged heavies. We got a bunch of burn stacks. We want to get our mana back a little bit, and then we're going to hit a Fireball, another heavy. We're going to do Incinerate. We have full stacks of burn. We're going to go ahead and proc that, get our potion, and now we're going to, with a full mana bar, we're going to Flamethrower. Now, that's up. We're going to hit our Fireball into an Incinerate, and we're going back. The damage output from this is so much higher than if you're just sitting there spamming flamethrower, or if you're sitting there at range, just doing pillar fire, fireball, heavy attack nonsense. You're going to get your burn stacks up. You're going to keep them up the whole time. They're never going to fall off. You're going to be doing a ton of damage. You actually get a little bit of health back with Incinerate. So if you get a little bit low, you can hit Incinerate, get your health back. This build, in my opinion, is by far the highest DPS you can do with the Fire Staff. Now, if you guys have any suggestions, make sure you let me know in the comment section down below. But it's pretty self-explanatory. Now, like I said, this is on a test dummy. There are some bosses where it's not as easy to get off Incinerate and to keep Flamethrower up. Flamethrower is kind of easy to keep up on most bosses. But even if you have to stay back, you can just stay back and do fireballs over and over again. Now, you are losing a ton of damage by doing it this way. We do want to keep our heavy attacks up because we can keep our burn up 100% of the time on the target if we are doing fully charged heavies, even without refreshing move. So we can do still a decent amount of damage here if we're doing our fully charged heavies. To get our fireball up as fast as possible, but you do want to be getting in there in basically melee range to do the flamethrower. Now, with the flamethrower, it does have a nice, decent range. So you can stand this far back, and then when you want to do your Incinerate, you can just dodge in, hit the pillar of fire, hit the Incinerate, and then dodge out. So it gives you that nice little bit of cushion for some mobs or some bosses that have a really close hitbox on their backswing. Now there's some bosses or mobs that are still going to cause trouble, but you can still stand at a nice distance without having to be right in the line of melee. If it's, the void attunement like it is right now, flamethrower doesn't proc it, so you don't have to worry about putting the purple underneath your feet. So it basically allows you just to do whatever you want. That's a mechanic you don't have to worry about. Now, when it comes to gear, we did talk about the Fire Staff a little bit. I would want Angry Earth, Vicious, and then keenly empowered if I can get it. If not, probably keenly jagged is up there. So those are probably the biggest thing. And if not, either flame attunement or chain fire are going to be like your next best. Like I said, we do have the basic attack to trigger chain fire, so it's not as good for this. If you were doing maybe a lot more basic attacks, this would be a little bit better, but this is really close to this. Now for your ring, you actually want fire damage. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but because we are guaranteeing our crits on our flamethrower and on our Incinerate, the only ability that we can't even get a proc on will be your fireball. And honestly, we don't do that much damage with our fireball anyway overall, so we really don't care about the keen awareness here. So hardy, fire damage. Other than that, you really don't need it. Obviously, some like refreshing. And then just get whatever gear you want. Refreshing, pillar of fire. If you're using pillar of fire is good. The Incinerate one is okay. Gives you some mana back. Accelerated flamethrower can be good if you're trying to kite around. They did make some nice quality of life to flamethrowers, so it allows you to really actually kite a lot better with it. But honestly, get a fire damage ring. Get an Angry Earth Vicious Fire Staff. Use this build, and you will absolutely be shredding through, especially Garden of Genesis, or get a Bane Vicious Weapon, and you can basically shred through any dungeon. When it comes to your gem, honestly, Diamond's a little bit better here. We do have the last perk in Flamethrower, so we can Flamethrower where you want to start off by dodging and then dodge to proc our Opal. You can continuously keep it up by dodging, but Diamond's probably a little bit better, so you don't have to dodge all the time. I still do try to dodge, but sometimes with this playstyle, you have your normal rotation, but it can be a little bit monotonous, so it can get to where you forget to proc your Opal, but you still do want to make sure you proc your Opal. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Let me know if you want me to do any more videos like this in the future. Ice Gauntlet is definitely one that needs it because people run Ice Gauntlet, in my opinion, extremely, extremely, extremely wrong. And not that you have to run this. This is sort of something I was testing for next patch, which I think is going to be pretty good. And I hope you guys enjoy this video. Like I said, if you want to see another weapon about how to optimize your DPS for it in PVE, let me know in the comment section down below. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Peace.